Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Health and Government Operations Committee. We ask that you not forward the Zoom link for the hearing. Staff won't allow anyone who was not invited to testify into the hearing. And as we've been saying all session, we hope that people will be watching the hearing on YouTube. At this point in the session, the bill sponsor is allotted 5 minutes to present a bill or the bill sponsor's designee, and then one additional witness will be allowed in support of the bill for 2 minutes. We ask that the witnesses stay in the room while we give the committee a chance to ask questions. And then if there's someone speaking in opposition or with amendments, they will each be allowed to speak for 2 minutes. We'd ask that you conclude your remarks when you see the timer finish. And members, please stay on video during the entirety of the hearing and ask only one question of one witness. If you need to follow up, please follow up offline and use the raised hand function to indicate that you have a question. So, and I will remind the committee and we'll do this again at the end, but there is a voting session today at 4:30 of the committee. With that, we will begin our hearing today with Senate Bill 106. This is licensing good standing with the State Department of Assessments and Taxation requirement. And I understand that we have Mr. Corbett Webb here to speak to this bill. Corbett?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Members of the committee, I'm Corbett Webb, Associate Director for the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, and thank you for the opportunity today to testify in support of Senate Bill 106. This legislation would provide an additional enforcement mechanism for non-compliant businesses to file required annual reports with our department, creating an equal playing field for businesses that follow state law and guidelines. This measure will also codify into law current practice by the department. Maryland law requires businesses to submit an annual report with a $300 payment, and currently some businesses either intentionally or unintentionally avoid this fee by simply not filing. As a result, non-compliant businesses can continue to operate while other businesses operate in compliance under state law. This creates a lack of incentive for businesses to follow state rules and guidelines. As an example, in order to get a PPP loan, filers must be in good standing with SDAT. Over the past year, we've been contacted by thousands of business owners who were delinquent on their filings and frantically trying to get back in good standing to qualify. Fortunately, we were able to assist most, if not all of them, but this legislation would promote them remaining in good standing instead of having to get back into good standing. Also, some filers also only register a trade name and do not actually register the business itself with SDAT, thereby skirting the annual reporting requirements and running into issues when PPP loans became available. This proposed legislation will identify additional businesses that failed to submit annual reports, leading to more businesses appropriately being in good standing with the state. The department's requested a technical amendment to clarify that the bill only applies to business entities and not to actual persons. And with that, that concludes our testimony. I respectfully request your support for Senate Bill 106, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webb. I see a question from Delegate Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill, Mr. Webb. My question has to do with the fiscal note. So there's a section of the bill that's in the business regulation article. So the fiscal note says the judiciary advises that it's not known if the clerks of the courts are considered a licensing issuing agency under the bill. So I wondered if you had any response to that from the fiscal note.
So I will check with our legislative director on that. I think that there's been some confusion. The intent to our bill hasn't changed, but as you can see, there have been a number of amendments. Another one we need to introduce. The questions concerned whether it applies to individuals, such as sole proprietorships and general partnerships. That's not our intent. This bill would only apply to businesses that are currently legally required to file annual reports with our department. So I'm not sure of the specifics with the clerk of the courts, but this legislation, it's only intended to compel business owners to file documents with us that they're already legally required to file.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Krebs.
And I'm sorry for seeming dense, but I still, explain to me a situation, why you think this has happened this year, or I understand the problem you're trying to solve, but what is initiated, what has made this problem occur? Are businesses not operating or what?
Sure. So, and this is, it's been made more of an issue during COVID, but this remained an issue prior to COVID. This isn't simply a COVID fix. Every legal entity in the state is required to file an annual report with our department once a year. Sometimes business owners intentionally don't file that to save $300. Sometimes they just unintentionally don't file it because of a change in staff or accounting people that they work with. So an instance in this bill, if you read the bill, it also includes parts where when businesses go to get these licenses from other agencies, the agencies are required to verify that they've paid all taxes to the comptroller. So this would, not only verify that they've paid all taxes to the comptroller, but also verify that they're in good standing with our department, which is a requirement to legally operate in the state. A lot of businesses, again, just because they might forget or they're delinquent, they don't file these documents. That doesn't mean they stop operating. It usually means that 2 or 3 years down the road, they're trying to apply for a bank account or they're trying to apply for PPP loans and they're denied because they're just then realizing they're not in good standing. That creates a much more urgent situation where you can imagine the calls that we get. And we typically drop everything we do to try to help these businesses out. But this would encourage them, as I said, to remain in good standing instead of, trying to get back into good standing. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, but tell me again how it encourages them. How does it encourage them?
Because when they're going to other agencies to obtain a license, that agency would point out to them, you should go to SStat.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
Some agencies do already, not all of them do. And we have some IT solutions that make that extremely simple for any other agency to verify.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Delegate Krebs, many people buy investment properties and homes in LLCs, and you have to file your personal property tax return in order to, and be held in good standing in order to sell that property. I think that's speaking to Corbett's statement there. I think one of the reasons why we're having this problem this year is most people, business owners, do not file their personal property tax return until they actually do their corporate returns. And because of COVID, a lot of people got pushed back because the federal government said, we're going to push back the tax filing deadline. And then the state said the same thing. I think that's probably why we saw such a big uptick, in my opinion. I don't know going forward if it's going to be a problem again, but most people don't know to file their personal property tax return until they do their actual corporate returns. And then, speaking of what Corbett's saying, when you run into the snag, you either have to go down to Preston Street in Baltimore, or you can do it online, and then they charge you what's called an expedited fee. So a lot of people do wait and do it after the fact. I don't know if this, maybe this bill will fix it. I don't know if it's necessary or not, but I'm just looking at it for the first time. But that's why I think that they had a tremendous uptick.
That's probably true. We did extend our filing deadline as well last year. But a lot of these, the frantic calls we got, they were actually, so that we extended our deadline to July 15th. They came in earlier in the year because that's when the PPP deadlines were hitting. For business owners who they might have been 1 or 2 years delinquent. So I certainly think, Delegate, that's the case in a lot of instances, but I do believe this bill will help a number of businesses as well.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Webb. That concludes I'm sorry. Delegate Bhandari.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. If I understood the bill correctly, so currently a business entity must not be in good standing with SStat before a state agency may renew its license?
So the policy differs depending on the agency and depending on the licensing board. A lot of them do require that they be in good standing. Not all of them do. this would make that a firmer requirement and especially put the business owner on notice.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Now that concludes the hearing on SB 106. Thank you very much for your time and your testimony, Mr. Corbett. And we'll move to Senate Bill 351. This is State Government Protection of Information Revisions, Maryland Data Privacy Act. And we have here Michael Leahy to present the bill to us.
Michael, you need to unmute yourself.
Thought I had already done that. Thank you so much. Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to testify before you. I am Michael Leahy, Secretary of the Department of Information Technology, and I appreciate this opportunity, as I said, to testify on Senate Bill 351. Data privacy governs how data is collected, shared, and used. And data and cybersecurity have an interesting relationship with regard to data privacy. In order to protect data, one must know what the data comprises, where it is, and how it's being used. And our principal responsibility is to the citizens to maintain their trust and their good faith that the government is operating transparently and efficiently with regard to maintaining their privacy and their concerns. Maryland residents, like people all over the world, are increasingly interested in understanding how and why information about them is being collected, how it's being used, and this bill not only demonstrates the state's commitment to adopting best practices to protect our citizens' data, but it also implements numerous best practices and policies providing citizens with previously non-enumerated protections codified in revised section 10-1304D2. Finally, for those who might argue that the body of the provisions of this bill concerning personally identifiable information are overly broad, because revised section 10-1301D6 states that information from multiple sources that when used in combination with each other or other identifying information can be used to establish individual identity will cause unconscionable workloads and confusion for units of state government. However, section 10-1302 does specify where that subtitle does not apply and it does remain in force. Finally, the Maryland Data Privacy Act modernizes the way state government agencies secure and manage PII, or personally identifiable information. The bill requires agencies to mirror federal procedures for ensuring that PII is protected from unauthorized access, use, modification, or disclosure, and citizens must be advised whether the disclosure of certain PII is voluntary or required, how that information is being shared with third parties, and are to be provided with an opt-out provision where possible. This is basically the same bill that the Department of Information Technology submitted last year, with one minor change that substitutes a specific requirement for security standards in the Federal Information Processing Standards to reference instead the do-it policies and regulations aligned with those federal standards. For those reasons, the Maryland Department of Information Technology respectfully requests a favorable report on Senate Bill 351. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious about something, Mr. Leahy. We've heard that upward of 60% of the unemployment insurance claims have been fraudulent. And I do know of several delegates that have told me, including myself, that somebody's actually put a claim in for them. And when I was thinking about it, I was concerned that this could be an inside job. Because who else has this kind of access to all the delegates, social security number, date of birth? And I'm not pointing fingers, but would this bill help to tighten up some of the security? Because obviously a lot of personal information is being put out in the public somewhere with Maryland citizens. And I don't know where it's coming from, but obviously it's a huge issue right now. I don't know if just reporting back to you is going to, this is too technical for me. I just want to know what kind of security is this really going to put on? Is it going to help?
Certainly. Delegate Chisholm?
Yes. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Oh, Mr. Leahy, you sort of froze there, so you may want to start over.
I will do that.
Okay, there we go. Now we can hear you. And
Okay, great. Thank you for the question, Delegate Chisholm. To put it in its simplest terms, yes, this will help a lot, because part of the issue we face today in securing data, as I said, is we have to know where it is and how it's being used. And in many cases, there is overlapping data that many units of government hold the same data. Some of it is in conflict. And by not only knowing where all the data is, we can conform it to a single standard and work to create what we'll call a golden record, so that each piece of personally identifiable information will only be held by one agency, and then we will have strict rules about how it's shared internally. And that should mitigate many of the improper uses we see today. The biggest problem we have today is that this has not been an issue in the past where we were concerned about centralizing security of data. And that's the purpose of this bill.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
you're welcome. Delegate Rosenberg.
Mr. Secretary, why do we need this bill now? What is the urgency?
Well, I think there are several reasons. The now is we have needed this for a long time. As I said, in order to secure data, one has to know where it is and how it's being used. And many of the security problems we face arise from the fact that data is not properly protected and sequestered, or it is accessible and available to people that ought not have access to it. So by putting this provision specifically into law, we do several things. The first is we raise consciousness about this question about data. Second, we incorporate it into our security standards. And third, if you've been watching the news and what has happened in Europe under the GDPR, their regulations for privacy, the California statute passed 2 years ago follows the European model. The Virginia statute passed just this past month follows that model. And a number of other states are adopting similar concerns. Rather than write a bill that would apply to all commercial and consumer transactions, we wanted to start with protecting citizens' data held by the state first, and then look at what was happening with regard to those other provisions once we actually understood what data we held.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Delegate Bandari. Oh, there he is. Delegate, we cannot hear you. Still no sound. Melissa, you have any ideas for him? Okay, try muting now and see.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And yeah, it's a wonderful idea to know what data comprises and how it is used. I'm not sure if you have seen the opposition letter, especially from Maryland Association of Counties, Mayor Office of Government Relations, City of Baltimore. And
Yes.
one of the opposition letter says that the bill alters Maryland Data Privacy Act in several ways that make it difficult for local government to implement, and the MECO believes that all provision of this bill should pertain only to state agencies. Do you want to have any comment on that? These
Sure.
opposition letters?
Well, the bill does only apply to units of government that are state agencies, except that we included a provision that I didn't think was necessary, but was added to be perfectly clear that local subdivisions and municipalities may ask for assistance and may piggyback on the work we're doing to determine how to establish their own. We are not establishing how they are to maintain their data, how they can use it. This provision would apply specifically to units of state government. And in that question, because I know there was also some opposition raised by the Motor Vehicle Administration, they had concerns that we should also specify that it did not supersede federal law, a particular provision of federal law. But obviously anyone aware of how the law works knows that the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, creating the Supremacy Clause, mandates that state laws can't supersede federal requirements. So that is an unnecessary provision because we do not impact or affect the federal requirements at all with this bill.
Thank you.
Okay, Delegate. Delegate Krebs.
Thank you. I had a similar question. I see what you just pointed out. There's just authorizing units of local government to request support. And that was put in by, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we have letters of opposition from Mako and from Baltimore City, but we have a letter of support from Prince George's County. So do you know if they are opposing it now that this provision is just authorizing it? Or I mean, they're going to be here to talk. But.
I have not spoken with them about it specifically, but we added that provision to clarify the concerns they raised in the past.
Okay, no, because I think the bill is a great idea and it needs to be done. But thank you very much for answering that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Chairman Pendergrass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm thinking about this and I'm finding the basic question. The governor is in charge of the departments, which wouldn't include the universities, but it would include all of the different departments. Have we already done this with all of the governments that are directly under the governor?
Well, we have not, to my knowledge. The reason we specifically raised this 2 years ago was because we did not find any provisions that people in the units were required to assess and maintain the data that they hold, where they hold it, and how they're using it. And so this provision raises the requirement that there should be a greater understanding of data in the state's care. And as I mentioned, the fact that we have many facets of that data that overlap. And whenever you have overlapping databases, you have problems with people misusing it.
Here's the question. You're going
Yes,
off in a different direction. I appreciate your wanting to give us the picture. If the governor has a cabinet of secretaries who report to the governor, and all of the secretaries are in charge of all of the departments that are directly under the governor, why is the governor not saying to the secretaries, this is what we're going to do because this is best practice? So our departments are all going to do best practice. Why do we need a bill to do this?
Well, I believe it is necessary for a number of reasons. Certainly, as you speak, the governor can command his cabinet as he sees appropriate. But we are also not looking at this in a vacuum. We are dealing with other state laws and what is happening not only in the United States, but elsewhere in terms of security for data. And by specifying this and creating the exact standards, which the bill references in Do It policy, we lay out how this is to be done. And hopefully, we hope it will be used not just by those units of government, but by, as you said, the universities and the judiciary and the legislature, and hopefully
Well,
other.
I'm a person who takes a step and then takes another step.
Yes.
To me, it feels like we're going from nowhere to 25 paces. Why are we not starting somewhere and making sure we've got the definitions right, we've got the all of the information right that we need to be looking at in 1, 2, 3 branches of government under the governor, instead of, we talk about pilot projects in this committee a great deal when we're dealing with non-government agencies. But in this case, we absolutely need to do what you're saying you want to do, which is protect everyone's data, and we should do it well. But I'm not convinced, and you may be able to convince the subcommittee, which would be fine, that there are actual standards that are federal standards that can be translated to state level and that will work for all departments, and that you actually need the authority coming from somewhere to get this started, because you're not going to do every department at the same time. That never happens. No way I can picture IT has enough people to work with all the different secretaries' responsibilities at the same time anyway. Why is this such a sweeping bill?
Well, I would argue if you look at other legislation dealing with this subject in other states, this is not a sweeping bill at all. This only involves units of state government rather than data standards for all transactions, all commercial, all consumer entities. And to your point, our principal concern is that there is a significant need, and it will happen over time. It will not happen all at once. As you said, we don't have the resources to send 20 people to every agency and assess where their data is, what data they're using. But rather, it is to put in place a methodology that is consistent with our approach to security. And as I'm sure you're aware, Madam Chair, there are a number of agencies that are beginning to use Do It to provide its security services that have not in the past. There are a number of agencies that are moving their data to our data hub and to our private cloud for the state. And so putting these provisions in the law gives them access to the standards, as you've said, that are federally considered best practices and best standards and are looked at by the National Institute, NIST, standards and technology with great regularity. And we thought this was the most appropriate way to do it.
Why would we not make this a law that says you need to deal with 2 departments and then you need to branch out in some number of years and deal with 2 more, and then in some number of years, all of them? Why aren't we doing that? And why, in fact, isn't the governor just saying, do it now?
Well, I
2 branches.
I can't speak for the governor, but my answer to that is I think that leaves at risk a number of the security questions that I've mentioned, that we, as a state, in many instances, agencies don't know what data they have because they have databases they have not used in years. And the assessments obviously would start both at data rich agencies like the Department of Health and the Department of Human Services, and small agencies at the other end. And the principal reason to set the standards out all at once is that everyone within the units of government will have an understanding of what standards we're applying and why it's important to apply those standards to add to the security of the state data in general. So to your point, we'll start with, 2 or 3 agencies, obviously, but I hope we could do the assessments within a year and finalize the methodologies that we will implement to secure that data within the following year.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I'm going to call on Hillary Ruley, who is speaking in up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you to Madam Chair and the members of the committee. I'm Hillary Ruley, a lawyer on behalf of Baltimore City, testifying in opposition. And I'm going to be really frank and brief. This bill applies to local governments because local governments are defined as a unit in that definition. And the problem here is that this bill expands data privacy to include the collection, processing, and sharing of personally identifiable information. This is unworkable because the definition goes from a set list of items that identify someone and broadens it to include anything you could maybe combine with that set list of items. This is impossible for formulating a contract. How do you hire a vendor to help you with your IT if you have to tell that vendor, you need to protect these discrete items, but also some other stuff? The second really big problem with this bill is it attempts to expand data security, which is a great goal, by saying, now let's capture the data shared between government units. There's already a robust state law that does just that. And in fact, it does it so well, it is a crime for any single state employee, any local government employee, anywhere in the state, to share someone's personally identifiable information in a way that violates that state law. It's called the Public Information Act. And while this law tries to say we're not going to touch that, everything this law does about sharing information between units of the same government, as in between the city's Department of Human Resources and its Department of Planning, that's already governed, and it's already governed on the state level. And that's why this bill's expansion to that area makes no sense. And it's either going to be completely ineffective because it already conflicts with the existing Public Information Act, or it's going to be utterly confusing. Because I think what the secretary respectfully doesn't understand is that's already covered extensively. There are court cases and there's an extensive list of laws. If you give your information to, for example, the state health department, and you ask to sign up for something, they already have restrictions on what they can do with that. This is why this bill makes no sense.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ruley. Questions from the committee? Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Ruley, does this bill cross any lines of the law, in your opinion?
Well, I don't believe so in the sense that it attempts to add. However, it doesn't make any sense because this bill defines public or personally identifiable information in a way that is totally unworkable with Maryland's Public Information Act. In the Public Information Act, you define the items and then you determine how they can be shared based on the circumstances. Here, you're trying to define personally identifiable as a bucket of things that might combine with other things. You've taken the sharing aspect and dumped it into the definition, and you've made it utterly unworkable. I think the goal is great. I mean, certainly Baltimore City's been the victim of a ransomware attack. So we have no problem with the goal, but this isn't going to reach it at all.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Baltimore City presenter. Now I can't find your name. Ms. Ruley,
Yes.
thank you. I would like to understand, I'm looking at the bill, and honestly, I'm not a software engineer, but I lived through that ransomware attack, and I remember how disruptive it was and how it was the first of a cascading series of similar attacks. Baltimore County was attacked and other jurisdictions, if I'm not mistaken. What I'd like to know from you, Ms. Ruley, is if this bill doesn't do what it says it's going to do, is there another approach you recommend that we take?
Yeah.
And let's hear it in plain English for us nerdy health policy folks.
Yeah. I would leave the data privacy aspect of what's on the books right now on the books. If you want to strengthen data privacy, then you can do that in terms of computer security. But when you go to strengthen data privacy by changing the definition of public or personally identifiable information to be something that conflicts with your already robust state law that governs when that information can be shared, you've just created a disaster. If you want to expand what that means, go to Maryland's Public Information Act and expand the definition of personal information there. And then you've captured every data agency share at every level in state and local government. This definitional change, while well-intentioned, it doesn't make any sense.
Let me stop you right there, Ms. Ruley. Thank you so much. If I heard you right, because again, some of this is new information and it's 13 days till sine die. My brain's not the best. What you said was to improve privacy protections, we could potentially improve the definition of PPI, of personal private information, change that definition.
Well, actually, that's what this bill attempts to do.
And you're saying we shouldn't do that. Don't change the definition of PPI.
I'm saying not in this bill. If you want to make it effective, go to Maryland's Public Information Act and change the definition that all agencies use when they share information with each other. There's already a law. If you want to strengthen that, go to where it is. Because
thank you, ma'am. I have one last question. Thank you. And if I may, Madam Chair.
Quickly,
and if it's all right, I'd like to know, why, in your personal opinion, Ms. Ruley, what's the point of this bill if it's not to protect privacy?
I'm sure
in your personal opinion.
I'm sure that was the intention.
But okay, thank you. It doesn't work. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
It's not going to actually do anything. Yeah.
My chair is going to shut me down. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I would never do that, Delegate Lewis. At least try not to. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Ruley, for being here, for your time and your testimony today. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 351, and we will move to the next bill, which is Senate Bill 360, State Government Notaries Public, Notary Public Fund and Remote Notarial Acts. And do we have the sponsor, Senator Rosapep, here?
Hi, Madam Chair. This is Owen Conham, Senator Rosapep's Chief of Staff. I'm going to have to fill in for him today, if that's okay.
That's fine with me.
I'll be very brief. This bill creates a special fund under the Secretary of State to administer the Notary Public program, pay for things like staff, technology. It will be paid for out of the processing fee that already goes to notary applications. If you have any questions, happy to answer them, but I'll leave it there.
Are there any questions? Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for that brief presentation. Just real quick, Owen, I was looking at the testimony from the Senate hearing, and there was a request. Is this amended from the original bill? Do we have the amendments that the Maryland Land Title Association put on? And if not, why would you all have resisted that?
I don't believe we accepted any amendments. I'm not sure why. I'm happy to follow
Okay.
up with you after the hearing.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Rosenberg. Oh, Delegate, you're on mute. Still. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. The fund is coming from the existing fee. And if that is the case, what would not be funded?
Mhm.
The fee would be funding this new program.
I'm not sure. Could you repeat the question?
I thought I heard you say that the fund that's created by this bill the source of funding would be an existing fee that notaries pay.
Yeah.
Well, that fee is now being used for a certain purpose, but if the fee is not being raised, it could no longer be used for that certain purpose. Are you familiar with how this would affect the use of the revenue from the fee?
I'm not, no.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
We can follow up with the senator. Thank you for pinch hitting, Mr. Khan. Chairman Pendergrass.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, and I think the salient point is we're allowing the notary fee to be increased. And there's something about a $9 processing fee for a license. So the first question to be asked is, what is the fee today for a notary? The second question that needs answering is, what is the fee now that is paid to the Secretary of State into the fund that there must already be being paid, or is it not being paid, and this $9 fee to register is a new fee or to renew? I don't know those questions. I think it would be helpful if some of that stuff was laid out, the very specifics of the mechanics of how the money, who it goes to, when it goes to, why it goes to them, and then how it funds the fund. Thank you.
Mr. Khan, I'm wondering if you can help us gather that information from the senator.
I will, absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 360. Thank you, Mr. Khan, for pinch hitting for the senator today. And we'll move to the next bill, which is Senate Bill 631. Work group to study and implement a statewide 311 non-emergency telephone system. Senator Kagan.
That is perfect timing. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm chairing in EHE, and so here we go. Okay. For the record, my name is Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Some of you may have heard me talk before about the fact that 3 people have died in my district when 911 has failed. For the last 3 years, and now we're in our 4th year, I've chaired a 911 commission. We've passed 9 bills so far and are on track for a few more this year. I think you have all gotten copies of our annual report. And one of the recommendations this year has become one of my very most favorite bills, which is rolling out a statewide 311 system. So we all know about 911, and that's what people call when you need police, fire, or paramedics. But it's really hard to recruit and retain our courageous 911 specialists. We also have just overburdened folks, and too many people call 911 when they really could be calling a 311 number. Where can I get a COVID test? Where can I get a vaccine? What day is my recycling being picked up? A tree fell across my driveway. In 6 counties, and those are Anne Arundel, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Montgomery, Prince George's, and St. Mary's, there currently are 311 systems, and they work really well to help people navigate local government and state government. Even if you have access to a website, even if you have access to a computer and you don't have a power outage or a problem with Wi-Fi, it can be hard to figure out how to get the information. That assumes you speak English, that assumes that you can navigate the web. And 311 is just a great service. A lot of jurisdictions either can't do, or choosing not to afford it as a priority, or they're not sure whether there's a need. So in working with the director of MEMA, the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, who has endorsed this bill and this idea and is really excited about it, we did get sign off from the governor, who also supports this, as a concept of really rolling out 311 statewide. I just want to flag for you that even though we were ready to launch it right away, there were a few issues that came up, and specifically issues like the 6 jurisdictions. Would they get folded in? Would it be an opt-in or an opt-out? How would the funding work? And staffing, what sort of oversight, where would the space, where would it be set up? And so we just had a few issues to work through. And so rather than trying to hatch something before it's time, we are going to just have 2 or 3 meetings. This isn't going to be some long, complicated work group. And Director Strickland and I have already had several conversations about it. Despite what the fiscal note says, I implored him that and reminded him that I thought he could do 2 or 3 meetings within existing resources. We're going to come up with recommendations. We're going to have the right people in the room, come up with a plan, send it back to the 911 Commission, and bring it back as legislation for next year. So this is about consumer service. It's not just pandemic, it is beyond, but connecting people more closely to their government in a service that has worked. 311 is on the governor's website right now, but it's a little misleading because you think it's going to be in every background, in every jurisdiction, and it's not. As I said, it's just in 6. And so with that, I hope you'll support putting all the right people to work on this issue. And so we'll be able to make recommendations and bring back legislation to actually launch this next year. I'd be delighted to take any questions. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Senator. We do have Kevin Canali here, who's also speaking on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Kevin Canali here in strong support of Senate Bill 631. I think Senator Kagan did a great job outlining the importance of the bill. We supported the bill as introduced, and we certainly understand that there are a few issues that we should probably work out prior to implementing 311. As Senator Kagan said, a number of counties already have this service for their residents. We think this bill is going to provide an avenue for all counties to be able to do this so that all boats can rise, so that we have the same level of service across the state. It's just the right way to do this. We think that the work group, as the bill's been amended, has the right people in the room to figure out the best ways to do this. And we'd ask for a favorable report on this bill. A lot of people need help with potholes, and they want to know certain things about bus routes and things of that nature. What this will do is enable our 911 folks at the 911 call centers to handle 911 in emergency situations. This provides people with another venue to reach out about government functions and such. So with that, you have my written testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we'd ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 631.
Thank you, Mr. Canali. I see a question from Delegate Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. My only question is, do we know why maybe the next 2 or 3 larger counties that aren't one of the current 6, do they have plans to do this on their own, or why or why not have they not already done their own 311?
Thank you, Delegate Carr. Appreciate the question. Before I answer, I just want to give a special shout out to Delegate Krebs, who, along with former Delegate, current Senator Jackson and Senator Riley, has been a devoted member of the 911 Commission and has been an amazing partner in all of this public safety work. So thank you, Delegate Krebs. In terms of other counties, I'm not sure whether others have looked at it. I have, as I've been to 17 of our 24 911 centers, it sometimes comes up. The problem is that in the workload and the training, the hiring, one of the reasons that the 911 Commission has endorsed this and is so excited about this bill, as I am, is because there's an incredible amount of, there's an incredible challenge in bringing the right people to be under the headset. And frankly, the burden is lower in a 311. There's less stress. You're not listening to a freak a parent whose baby stopped breathing, or a house that's burning down, or a bad guy who just attacked them and ran away. So whether it's an onboarding opportunity to someone who's not quite ready to become a 911 specialist, or an opportunity as someone who needs a break after PTSD, after special trauma, or just prior to retirement, 311 offers that mentoring and training opportunity. And so that's something I think is very appealing to the counties. And Delegate Carr, just to even really directly answer that, there is a fiscal implication as well as a hiring burden. And so, so other counties have looked at it, but if we go statewide, I think it's the right thing to do to put people, to provide the customer service and connect people with government.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Krebs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also have 211, and I'm just asking if this will also consider that we have 211, and how do we eliminate confusion, and how do we differentiate the difference between 911, 311, 211? I'm just asking to have that as a consideration in all of this.
Thank you, Delegate Krebs. That has come up in conversation, and I think Director Strickland and everyone who's in the room working on this will be discussing and exploring that. Part of this is just education. You know, from the youngest ages, kids are taught that if the house is on fire or grandma's, fell down or something, you dial 911. So letting folks know about 311 is going to be helpful. 211, 511. You probably know in this committee that 988 is going to be rolled out, and that's a suicide prevention hotline that is rolling out nationally. So when we have people who representing counties both with and without 311 currently, we will definitely make sure that all of that is part of the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, because as you mentioned 988, that's supposedly part of our 211, and now that's a federal thing. So if they could all look at it all comprehensively, it would be helpful.
And regardless of what recommendations this group would compile, it will come back to our 911 commission, our consideration and adoption or modification.
Thank you.
So Delegate Krebs asked my question, but I would ask perhaps that the executive director of 211 be part of the work group, because I know that they would have a lot to contribute about how to implement something pretty efficiently and effectively, and support the informational piece that people are going to need. So, and make intersections, I think, pretty clear.
I have no problem with that, Delegate Collison. And if the committee chooses to amend that person in, that's fine. I just want to be mindful of the clock, but you that we would consult or include that person because it makes, if you want to amend that person in, we'll just have to move that quickly back and forth.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Senator. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Canale, for coming and testifying today. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 631.
Thank you all.
Move to Senate Bill 689. Senator Sidnor, that's the Office of Small Minority and Women Business Affairs, duties of the Special Secretary, Minority Business Enterprises. Senator Sidnor.
You have Eugene Clark on for Senator Sidnor at this time.
Well, we welcome you, Mr. Clark. Thank you for pinch-hitting for the senator.
Well, yes, he's on. He's got two other bills being heard right at this time before the Judiciary Committee.
Okay.
So I'm stepping in with respect to this one, and this is a really easy bill enough to what it's going to be doing. SB 689 is going to be doing four things for us, and one of them, of course, is going to talk about establishing a mentoring program under our current program in the Office of the Small Minority and Women's Business Affairs Office under the Special Secretary. And then with that in mind, it's going to be asking them to conduct feasibility studies with respect to how can one provide one-on-one assistance, of course, to those MBEs that are in need of such assistance. Thirdly, it's going to be asking those entities, which are large minority businesses, to mentor those smaller businesses or those who are just coming online so that they can get a feel for and get the kind of experiences that's necessary to be successful. And then, of course, fourthly, they're saying that there needs to be an award program so that people can come together, celebrate their accomplishments and what have you. And that too would be up under the Small Business and Minority Business Office. So those are the four essential elements of this particular bill.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Do we have questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. And that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 689.
Thank you for your help. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will go to Senate Bill 703. This is Senator West. Welcome back, Senator. Procurement, Minority Business Enterprises, Qualifications and Certification. Senator West.
Great. Chair Collison, it's so good to see you. Every time I join this committee, I seem to have a different chair. And that's great.
We want to keep everyone on their toes, Senator.
That's good. So I'm pleased to introduce Senate Bill 703 today. This bill is one of two bills this session that I had the privilege of introducing, which embodies one of the recommendations of the Senate President's Advisory Work Group on Equity and Inclusion. There's no cross-file for this bill, so if I could, I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to explain the bill to you. Ever since 1978, Maryland has had a minority business enterprise program to encourage women and minority-owned firms to participate in the state procurement process. Maryland's current MBA statute requires agencies to make every effort to achieve an overall minimum goal of 29% of the total dollar amount of their procurement contracts directly or indirectly from certified MBE firms. The federal government has its own MBE program overseen by the U.S. Small Business Administration. Currently, businesses must separately qualify as MBEs under both federal and state law. So a business which has successfully navigated federal statutes and regulations and qualified as a federal MBE must apply and qualify separately under Maryland's MBE program. This is burdensome to minority and women-owned businesses and deters them from participating in the state procurement process. With that as an introduction, Senate Bill 703 merely requires the State Board of Public Works, which oversees all state procurement, to adopt new procurement regulations that will enable a federal MBE that has been certified under the Federal Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program to become certified as a Maryland MBE without requiring the business to file any additional paperwork other than evidence of its federal certification. In order to obtain a Maryland MBE certification at the moment, an applicant has to fill out lengthy application documents, undergo an investigation, be the subject of a deliberative administrative proceeding, and then await an ultimate determination letter. So Senate Bill 703 expedites things. It changes the existing law to provide that a federal certification alone will suffice, and an MBE will no longer have to separately establish its eligibility under Maryland law. I'd like to note that the Senate passed this legislation unanimously, and for these reasons, 703, a favorable report. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the committee. I have Delegate Rosenberg.
Do the federal standards differ? Welcome back, Senator West. Do the federal standards differ in any way from the state standard?
In minor respects.
Since that's all that would be needed.
Yeah, they're very, very similar. It basically involves, would involve the minority business enterprise repeating the same application process a second time. There's some modest differences, but nothing that seems to me to be substantive.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chairman Pendergrass.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Welcome back is right. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thanks. I have a memory, and I see that there's no history to this bill, but I have a memory of this subject being discussed some years ago, probably about the time you were on the committee. And it had to do with,
Could well have been.
do you recall something? Because I thought that we actually did say that if the business was federally qualified, then it was state qualified. Clearly, we didn't say that, so I'm wondering.
I don't think we did it because it's not in the law. And when when the equity and inclusion work group got together, we made about 50 recommendations, a number of them in the area of environmental equity, healthcare equity, and economic equity. And this was one of the ones in the economic equity area. And when it was first proposed, I had the same question you did, but then I went back and took a look at the statute, and indeed, there's nothing there which says that someone who's qualified under the federal MBE standards can come into Maryland without having to totally requalify or qualify separately. So
thank you.
My feeling was this is a good bill.
Senator, I have a question. So right now, it's possible for a business to qualify just under Maryland standards if they chose, and or under federal standards, but that doesn't really get them anything in the state of Maryland unless they go through the process, the complete process again.
Correct.
So why would a company, so give me an example of a company that might go for a federal qualification before they would go for a state qualification?
Well, let's assume that it's a minority contracting company that does road work. So
Okay.
government, which is located right next door to us, would need subcontractors on projects that would involve paving. And so the company would want to get certified as a federal MBE so it could qualify for special treatment in the procurement process by the federal government. At the same time, the company may be located in Prince George's County and would like to qualify as a Maryland MBE, so it would qualify for Maryland paving contracts.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Sure.
Are there any other questions for the senator? Then there's no other speakers, so that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 703. Thank you, Senator, for coming and seeing us again.
Thank you all very much.
We will move to Senate Bill 697. This is Senator Eckert, and we have state procurement, minority business enterprise program participation by gender or race.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's good to be here and good to see you up there. And I am Senator Addie Eckert here for the record on Senate Bill 697, State Procurement Minority Business Enterprise Program, participation by gender, race, presented to you today. And I appreciate this opportunity. This bill simply allows minority women-owned businesses to report their dual ownership status for the Minority Business Enterprise Program. Currently, the MBE laws require agencies to make efforts to ensure that at least 29% of the total dollar value of their procurement goes directly or indirectly to businesses that are minority or women-owned. These businesses, however, up to this point, have to choose to be designated as either a minority or a woman-owned business. They're unable to be designated by both. Now, you would say, well, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that it hinders the accuracy of the MBE data. And so it doesn't accurately reflect the true ownership of the businesses. This bill is a product of the President's Advisory Work Group on Equity and Inclusion, of which I was very happy to participate on, and it allows businesses to identify their dual ownership status, both as women-owned and minority-owned. I'm very hopeful this bill will more accurately reflect and represent businesses and improve the MBE data. So I urge your favorable consideration and passage of this initiative as it passed through the Senate, and we look forward to seeing the fruits of our labor. Thank you very much, and I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Are there questions from the committee? Delegate Krebs.
Thank you. And I sort of have the same vague memory of something like this a few years ago, and I thought we had done something like this as well. And maybe we could look back and see, 'cause I remember the same conversation a way back, and either we didn't pass it or it's somewhere else, but I do recall this subject matter.
I think it did come up before, but when we did our thorough study of it, this interim, we found that you have to make a choice. You can't
still have to make a choice.
You still have to make a choice. You can't use both. And the issue is more of how do we capture the right data that we need to make sure we're getting adequate participation from both our women and our minority businesses. That's the issue.
And we count toward both.
Yes.
I got you. I swore I thought we did this, but okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I know, we all did too. But, and the other issue was, I convened some work groups at the local level and it bubbled up from the local level. So, you know, each of us on the committee had experiences with it, and that's why it became one of our initiatives in that process. Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Senator Eckhart, for this bill. I just want to make sure I understand. Do we expect that by making this change, allowing qualified businesses to file as women-owned and minority-owned, do we feel that this will help us achieve our state targets for state contracts? Will this make it easier for us to actually achieve that 29% MBE procurement goal?
That is exactly right. Thank you for that. Not only does it improve the data, but we think it's going to more accurately reflect the reality and give people more opportunity.
Thank you, Senator, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, don't go anywhere, Senator. That concludes the hearing.
I am not.
697. And we will move to Senate Bill 744 against Senator Eckhart, and that's State Board of Nursing Certified Nursing Assistant Advisory Committee membership and meetings.
And thank you very much, Senator Addie Eckhart here again for the record for testimony on Senate Bill 744, the State of Board of Nursing Certified Nursing Assistant Advisory Committee membership and meetings. Thank you. Once again, this has been an initiative I've been working on all this year, as you know, to improve our workforce, and particularly with the pandemic, we've seen a real frustration with having, we were already short actually within our nursing homes for CNAs and GNAs, and it became even more aggravated through the pandemic that we didn't have that kind of a backup core, if you will, to be able to add additional staff. So not only do we make some changes to being able to improve how we get our CNAs and GNAs certified through the board, we also took a look at the committee, and the board brought to me the bill. And that committee was pretty general as it was stated in the law. And so this, the advisory group does make recommendations to the full Board of Nursing regarding the training programs, which is what we want to see improved regulations and enforcement. And again, the advisory committee evaluates candidates and reviews investigations of complaints against nursing assistants or med techs and makes recommendations for disciplinary. This bill actually conforms the language regarding membership and meeting requirements that the State Board of Nursing Advisory Committee be in line with the other board subcommittees. It also adds additional members. They were having difficulty actually getting enough members to meet the quorum and be able to participate in the activities that they need to be participating in as required by law. So since the Board of Nursing continues to be on the forefront of the healthcare delivery in this state, this establishes consistency in the statute governing their makeup so that they can do their work on a regular basis and get more CNAs into the workforce. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator. And we have Karen Evans from the Board of Nursing to speak to us as well.
Oh, good. Hey.
Hi. Good
Hey there.
afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Madam Chair and other members of this committee. Thank you for allowing the Board of Nursing to speak. The advisory committee is truly, truly essential for the Board of Nursing, especially to have the training programs come through, and hopefully with the passage of another bill for CNA refresher courses, we're definitely going to need them. We want to make sure that all of the committees were aligned as far as 4 and 4 years as service to the board. So this committee not only does the CNA training programs, but also advises the board when we have an investigation on a CNA, MT, CNA, and GNA. So it's also important for that. So I thank you for hopefully giving us an approval to move this ahead. And thank you, Senator Eckhart. I echo everything that she stated. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Are there questions of the sponsor or Ms. Evans? Seeing none, I think the bill was covered very well. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 744. Thank you both for your time and testimony today.
And thank you.
Thank you.
We will move to Senate Bill 836. This is Senator Beidel, and it's the State Board of Dental Examiners Disciplinary Process and Actions Task Force. And we have Senator Beidel here. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you. I actually was just able to leave a very combative discussion in my own committee. So this is thank you, Acting Chair. And I guess is Vice Chair Penny Melnick there, member, all the members of the Health and Government Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 836, State Board of Dental Examiners Disciplinary Process and Actions Task Force. As you know, a lot of our bills are drafted because of an issue that we hear from our constituents. And this is certainly true of Senate Bill 836. Anne Arundel County had a local dentist that had numerous complaints since 2009. And finally, in 2020, he voluntarily surrendered his dental license. After discussions and emails with the dental board, I learned that they really could use some additional help in enforcing this kind of discipline with dentists that are not operating good dentistry. So there's 295 of these patients on a Facebook page. Many of them, their actual dental work is falling out. We have other dentists in the community doing pro bono work for them. And the Office of the Attorney General is working on 82 claims of payment for dental work that was never completed or not completed properly. So it's been a real problem, but I know that there are cases in other counties, not just in Anne Arundel. And originally the bill came in with a process that was modeled after the Board of Physicians, but the dental board had some issues with that. And so we decided it was a better choice to just work together over the interim in a work group and try to figure out what will help the dental board with disciplinary. What is it they could use to better enforce these problems? So you'll see there's an amendment on the bill, and I'm asking you to support the bill as amended. Actually calling out the members of the task force. And I know a lot of us don't like to be on task force in the interim, but I have volunteered to be the Senate representative. I'll need someone to be the House representative, along with the Dental Association, the Attorney General, some consumers, hygienists, and the University of Maryland School of Dentistry. So I just asked support for Senate Bill 836 as amended so we can work on this issue in the interim and provide a better process for the Board of Dentistry. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We also have Danielle Varanian speaking on the bill as well. Danielle?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, for the record, my name's Danielle Varanian, and I'm an attorney who represents some dentists before the Board of Dental Examiners. First, I just want to thank Senator Beidel for bringing this bill because we think that this is a very important bill. It recognizes that there are serious issues with the dental board, and particularly serious issues with respect to the disciplinary process at the dental board. So we are supportive of it in that sense. The issue that we have with the bill, though, is that it kicks the can down the road, all the while allowing these due process issues that the dental board has repeatedly to keep on happening. You know, delegates, imagine yourselves if you had an ethics complaint hanging over your head for well over a year. It causes an immeasurable amount of damage to these licensees. So this is a board that has showed us repeatedly its incapability for following the law in every respect, in every facet, including its own appointments, its ability to conduct show cause hearings, full evidentiary hearings, even with respect to procurement. So our issue with this bill is simple. We do not want to delay fixing the problems. We know what the problems are, and that is why that is our only issue with the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee. We're going to start with Delegate Krebs.
Thank you, Senator Vital, for this bill. It's near and dear to my heart. I've been doing some work on this myself, and I'm looking for some solutions. And I just read we had some free time today, so I read the last Sunset Review from 2009 of the dental examiners, and that's very long ago. And the exact things that we're bringing up here are problems that were issued in that report in 2009. So here we are, and I just found out that the new the new Sunset Review is this year, and I'm assuming they're on schedule. So this year, July 1st, 2021. But the question becomes, after reading that full report with all of these issues in there from years ago, we are still dealing with the exact same issues, the board and the due process. And I literally cannot believe it's like they wrote the report this year. So even if we have this work group or we have another, how do we make sure that this stuff gets implemented and changed? Because it's literally like deja vu reading this report. So the question becomes, how do we use the Sunset Review process, this process, and how do we make sure that the changes actually happen?
Delegate Krebs, thank you for the question. I think, number one, we need to lay out a definite process. Some of the things I was told, for instance, that the dental board doesn't have the right to subpoena where the Board of Physicians does. And so when you have issues, they can't even subpoena a dentist in to come and, question them about this poor dentistry. I don't know what happened between the last dental review and now. I don't know if there were bills that weren't passed, but it's really time to look at the process. This particular dentist had claims from, and if you looked at my testimony, I spelled it out, 2009, 2012, 2013, 2016, 2 cases in 2017, and 2 cases in 2019. And there are other people that contacted me and said they made reports to the board and they never even heard back. And so we have to do something. And I don't know what's been attempted before, but I feel like this is an opportunity to work with the dental board as well as other advocates and put a process in place. And hopefully they're going to follow, the very specific things that we lay out.
And I want to just thank Danielle for being involved in this. You bring a lot of legitimacy to this, and we do need to have, I don't know what the answer is, but we need to do something this year before we leave here. And I appreciate everyone working on it, including my subcommittee chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Krebs, on behalf of your subcommittee chair. Are there any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, that completes the hearing on Senate Bill 836 and the work before us today. I will remind the committee that we have a voting session at 4:30 today, and we will have another voting session on Friday, likely at 5 o'clock, depending on how the floor sessions go, but that's plan that for your calendars as you are planning your week. With that, I thank you all for being here today and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.